everybody. This is Kim McNamara from Read It Again Bookstore. Welcome to our online authors event series. This week we have, or actually this day, we have Ginger Eager. Hey, Ginger.
Hi. It's great
Hi.
to be here, Kim. Good to see you.
Thank you for doing this. Ginger's actually been in our store. This is the first author in a while we've had who's been in our store. Were you here before the renovation or after the renovation?
Oh, I don't know, actually. I was there for Jocelyn Jackson's event, so I'm not sure. Okay. It was great. Wonderful used book selection, and then a wonderful curated recent book selection.
We try. We've been here 18 years.
Okay.
And so we expanded through the wall last year. I don't know, the year before. I don't know. It's all blurring together. So the section we did the Jocelyn Jackson event is our kids section, and I felt like I lined it up like a wedding. Because all the chairs.
It was like a wedding. Yes, it was.
So I texted it to a couple people I knew were getting married. I was like, hey, you want to get married at a bookstore? If anybody out there wants to get married in our bookstore, I'm cool with that. Just let me know.
I can think of nothing more romantic.
So we were playing with doing date night at a bookstore, but not right now.
Okay. Yeah.
Anyway, okay, let me introduce you. Ginger Eager was raised in Snellville, Georgia by a hardworking family who valued kith and kin. Her work has been published in the Chattahoochee Review, Bellevue. Did I say that right?
You did.
Literary Review, the Georgia Review, and elsewhere. She now lives in Decatur. I love Decatur, Georgia, with her husband and son. Ginger's first book is called The Nature of Remains. There it is. And I just finished it. I only have one copy, everybody, because we sold them all. And if you would like a copy of Ginger's book, I'll put a link in the comments and you can just buy it. And Ginger lives close enough that we can get it autographed.
I would love to do that.
Yeah, that'd be really cool. Can you tell us a little bit about The Nature of Remains?
I can. So The Nature of Remains opens in 2009. The housing market has crashed and the recession has reached the tiny town of Flyshoals, Georgia. And we meet a woman named Doreen Swilley. Doreen has been executive secretary for 30 years and planned to retire from this job. It's also important to know that she's been having an affair with her boss for all of those years. So she comes to work one day and her boss tells her that his wife is dying and that he intends to sell the business and let Doreen go. But never worry, he'll marry her as soon as his wife dies. And Doreen's furious. If she had wanted to marry this man, she would have made it happen. She's not the sort to stick in a situation that doesn't suit her. She's clearly not been seen by this person that she thought loved her for 30 years. And he's about to leave her unemployed during the recession. So she sets out to steal his business from him. And she just might succeed if she can keep hidden all the secrets that have linked their families for a couple of decades now.
Yeah, so I have this and it was beautifully written, by the way.
Thank you.
This is a book about family secrets and living in a small town.
I agree with that.
Yeah. Doreen's story is my favorite, but there's several storylines in the book. Like she jumps time a bit between 2009 and
1958, 1959.
So, and today I was getting ready and I'm like doing math. So which I'm really bad at.
Don't ask me how many years that is of a span.
Because I was trying to figure out how old is Ginger, because she was a baby when you meet her, or a toddler in 1965 or 9, and then when you meet her in 09, and then Bird. Is that after Bird Dog?
It is after Bird Dog, yeah, because they called him Bird Dog, yeah. So Bird is in his 70s, and he's still continuing to work. He has told Doreen that he'll work until she's old enough to retire, and she's in her late 50s.
Yeah, I enjoyed their storyline. That was my favorite. I love Doreen's spunk. She's like, no, I'm just going to do this, and she goes and gets her GED, in her 60s?
She does. She goes and gets her GED online, yeah. Yeah, I love her too.
Geology is a big theme in the book too. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Again, so I've been married to a geologist for over 20 years. That's the first part. And geologists really like to talk geology when you're hiking. We do a lot of hiking, a lot of camping, a lot of backpacking. So I've had this 20-year field experience as part of my marriage. And then I had this experience sort of paralleling this, where I found out through visiting a crystal show that Georgia actually has some of the best amethysts on the planet. I had no idea. And so then I realized that I wanted to use geology as this extended metaphor for the human soul. And I had sort of a basic understanding of crystal formation and how crystals form. And then there were the resources in the house. We had textbooks and such that I could read to amend that knowledge. And then I had a pretty well-educated geologist, in bed next to me that I could shake awake and say, wait a minute, what about this?
Yeah. So one of the other storylines is Doreen's son who steals amethyst. Does. Okay, so he steals it because he doesn't own the land, right? He doesn't own the mineral rights. And they sneak in the middle of the night and he gets his best friend involved. And it seems sketched, but funny at the same time because they're digging dirt for rocks. And I just thought that was hysterical.
So I met a crystal crook, and I met a man who was doing this, and he described stealing these rocks from private land and from government land, and that was the basis for Jonathan's own thievery.
That's crazy. and I like before he starts stealing things, you set it up where the mom, he's like, the one thing he doesn't do is steal. His mom really, laid it into him when he was young and he hasn't done it, but he's like, yeah, I'll go dig some dirt and steal some rocks.
Well, it's interesting, right? I mean, he continues throughout the whole book to consider himself not a thief. And I don't really know how he continues to believe that. Maybe it's because of the labor involved in the theft that he's a part of. Maybe it's because it's the land that he lives upon. I'm not sure. Yeah.
I like how you say that he continues to believe. Are your characters in your brain like full-fledged people?
Of course. Yeah. I can see them talk and, they have clothes, houses, all of these things.
It's good to have clothes that they're not standing in your brain naked.
I would tell them to go put on clothes if they did that. Go get some jeans. Good grief. That's not the sort of book we're writing.
So Jonathan and his wife have some issues in the book. And I liked seeing because I'll just say it, Jonathan is a bit of abusive, but they get into it together. And I like seeing the mom where she makes a stand where she's not going to necessarily support it. She's going to stand with her daughter-in-law. And I thought that was an interesting choice because a lot of times in stories you read moms who are closed-minded, they're like, no, my son doesn't do this, and so I like that choice that you made.
Thank you. I really considered the book sort of a coming of age story for Doreen, a much delayed coming of age story as a result of the opportunities that have been available to her. So she has always been an empowered woman. I mean, she got pregnant as a teenager and decided to keep the baby and sort of lied her way into a job and has been a strong single mom. And then she has to take that to an entirely new level when she decides to steal the business from Bird. And through that, she comes to see her daughter-in-law in a whole new way. Previous to that experience, she had sort of viewed Lexi as somebody who should do the things that Doreen wanted Lexi to do to support the family. But she came to see Lexi as an independent woman in her own right and really respected Lexi for the choices that she was making, like going to nursing school and trying to get a better life for the grandchildren. And she ends up sort of abandoning her own son to support her grandchildren, which means supporting her daughter-in-law.
Well, because they married so young, Lexi was practically a child when she came into her house. And so I think it's totally fine. She's not just supporting her grandchildren, but she's supporting a woman she helped raise.
It's true. I know Lexi moves into the house when she's just a teenager. Lexi's own father is abusive, and she starts dating Jonathan. He's far too old for her. And Doreen, so Lexi shows up on Doreen's doorstep one day with her clothes in her hand and a black eye. And Doreen lets her move in and says, well, you can live here, but I'm not running a flop house. You're going to sleep in the bed next to me and you'll do what I say. So, and she makes sure that Lexi graduates from high school and gets a job.
Yeah, this is Doreen was my favorite, and her best friend. The two of them were hoot. And just being in the church parking lot and using the church for free child care, I just thought that was hysterical because I may or may not have done that in the past where I dropped the kids off and they went elsewhere, but I won't own up to it. So you didn't hear it.
The most important thing is that the kids get God.
How did this book come about?
There were several experiences that I had that sort of coalesced into it, but the one experience I would point to, this was around 2007 maybe, and a friend she was a real estate agent at the time, and she took me to see this piece of property that was for sale. It was an old farmhouse, and it was way out in the country. And the owner had told her that he had some renters that were moving out and the door would be unlocked, and just to let ourselves in. So we get there and there aren't any other cars, it appears to be deserted, but we knock on the door. And in fact, there is someone still there. And so this woman opens the door, just a little bit, and she screams at us that we need to leave immediately, that her husband's at the pond and he doesn't take kindly to visitors. And if he sees us, he'll shoot us. So we got in the car and we left. And I just couldn't quit thinking about that woman. So morally, I agree that there shouldn't be any homeless people because there are enough houses for everyone. But what does that look like in practice? Mm-hmm. And what does that look like in a deeply rural area where there isn't much of a social safety net? And so the help that you get is what you receive from family and friends. And I just kept thinking of what had to have gone wrong in her life, the strings of things that had to have happened for her to be in that situation. So then when the housing market crashed and people that I knew started, losing jobs and potentially losing houses, I thought back to that woman, and then these characters started to show up.
Because I was gonna say we were gonna talk about there's a charity that you're donating a portion of your book to, mm-hmm. and that's called
Circle of Love. Yeah, it's a women and children's shelter, and it's in Greensboro, Georgia. Yeah.
So why did you choose that one?
Because it's the one, that area is the area where Flyshoals is. Flyshoals is the town in the book, and it's a fictional town, but it's comprised of experiences that I had in that area of Georgia. And that's the only shelter there. And many, many years ago, when I was still in college, I worked at a golf course that was located near there. And one of the women that I was friends with was actually in an abusive situation and trying to get out of it. I don't know that she would have gone to a shelter, but it wasn't even an option at that point in time. Circle of Love hadn't opened. So
that's awesome. So guys, if you buy Nature of Remains, a portion of the proceeds will go to help a shelter. And well, I think that's an awesome reason just to buy the book, but then it's even better is that the book is actually good.
Thanks.
So you won an award.
I did.
What was the big award for this one?
The AWP Prize for the novel, the Associated Writers and Writing Program. It's the professional organization for writers in America.
And you've had some really great support by some really famous authors.
I have.
Feel free to name drop. It's okay.
Jocelyn Jackson, Paula McLean, mm-hmm. Anna Schachner. Yeah, it's been wonderful. It's been stunning.
Yeah, because I will read anything Jocelyn says to read. Like if she points to something, I will read it. And I know Jocelyn's got a huge following here. And basically, if I hold up a book and said Jocelyn liked it, they're like, "Oh, I'll buy it."
I feel the same way about Jocelyn. Yeah, she's a wonderful reader and she has great taste. I've been enjoying her reading series. Actually, when we wrap up, I'm going to get on tonight. She's going to be with the woman who wrote My Dark Vanessa. At 7:30, I think. Yeah,
it's the Georgia Center for the Book, right?
Yes.
Yeah. And I think Acapella is doing their books. They're friends of ours, which reminds me, everybody, you should support your local independent bookstore. It doesn't have to be us. I prefer that it's us, but it's okay if it's not. But you definitely need to go out and support your independent bookstore. So if you don't get Ginger's book from us, find a bookstore, an independent one near you, and go buy it, because that's how you do it. That's how you keep businesses like us alive.
I agree. And all of your independent bookstores are just going to heroic measures right now to make it very easy for you to buy books, even if you can't go in. Everyone's doing curbside pickup and delivery, all sorts of creative things. So give a call.
We do that. So what are you reading right now?
So I'm reading Milkman by Anna Burns. Have you read this?
No, I haven't.
Okay. Yeah, so it's set in Northern Ireland during the Troubles, and I'm only halfway through it, so I can't say too much about it. but it is so good. It won the Booker, I think, 2 years ago. And the voice in it is just incredible. It's this teenage girl, and it's very close. There aren't even paragraph breaks. Like, the language is very sort of stream of consciousness. And then there isn't actually much white space on the page. So you're really inside this girl's head, and you're really inside the troubles, and you're really inside the danger and the sexism of those times. And it manages to be hilarious.
That sounds really good.
It's very good. And then I also just finished, I'll hold this one up. I just finished The Wolf Border by Sarah Hall.
Okay.
So good. So we went to Scotland last summer, thank goodness, because who knows when any of us will travel again. And I picked up some books there. So she's from Northern England. And this one it features this scrappy woman who is a biologist. And she has been working in America on a Native American reservation to try and reinstate wolves. And then she decides to go back home. She gets this invitation to go back home and reinstate wolves onto this Earl's plantation. And so she takes the job, and she gets on the plane, and she finds out she's pregnant, and she's just going to do it all. She's going to reinstate the wolves, and she's going to be a single mom. It's great.
And what was that called again?
That one's called The Wolf Border by Sarah Hall. And then my nonfiction, I'm reading Me and White Supremacy. Yeah, by Layla F. Saad. Yeah, very good.
Yeah, I've heard that's
very
really
important book.
I think I saw her speak. So one of my favorite questions to ask as I enter things into the comments is, what did you read growing up?
Well, I read Judy Blume, and I read Beverly Cleary, Tiger's Eye. Did you read that one by Judy? That was my very favorite. I read it several times a year. I still have a copy, and it's worn on the pages. I actually read most of Mark Twain. So, and then I read the Nancy Drew series and Alfred Hitchcock and the Three Investigators. Those were great. I didn't really get into the Hardy Boys as much.
Yeah, we get those Three Investigators in every once in a while, and you're the second author to say that they love that. So maybe that's the key to becoming a good author, is to read Hitchcock.
Maybe so.
Now, who do you see as your influences? Like, who influenced you growing up? Who do you credit with your awesomeness?
Oh, wow. So as far as who I read that I feel really influenced me, Daniel Woodrell. I think if you like Daniel Woodrell, then you'll like my work. But I also loved, I have this one. I also love Marilyn Robinson. Have you read Housekeeping?
No, but I've sold it.
It's gorgeous. And then there's a book by Halldór Laxness. He's an Icelandic author, and I've read almost everything he's written, but there's one of his novels in particular called Independent People. It's just beautiful. And it's about this man who's a crofter, which is the equivalent of a sharecropper, and he's trying to gain independence and buy his own piece of land. And meanwhile, his daughter, they have this really claustrophobic relationship, and his daughter is trying to gain independence from him. And that book impacted me a lot as an adult when I started writing. Yeah.
That's great. So what advice would you give aspiring writers?
Well, keep writing. Just write and write and write and write. And also find a community, find a writing group. I mean, writing is lonely work, and you need support, and you need somebody who believes you and likes your stories, and you need someone who can read the pages that are just crap and still convince you to keep going. So keep writing, keep reading, and find friends. Yeah.
Can you tell me about the title, Nature of Remains? Where does that come from? I saw it in the book as a quote. Did you pull it from that?
It's taken from the book. Yeah, there's a section in the book where a man, Bird sits with these items that he's not been able to look at for a very long time. And he hasn't been able to look at these items because he's believed that they would be too painful, and he's kept them under lock and key because he believed that if anyone else found these items, then they would know his deepest, darkest secrets. But in fact, after his wife passes away and he develops the courage to pull these things out of a drawer, he realizes that they would have no meaning for anyone, that they're sort of empty of meaning in and of themselves. And he compares it to walking through the woods and stumbling upon the stairs from where a house used to be, and how it evokes all of this feeling in you, but there's really nothing there. It's the nature of remains to evoke these feelings.
And I like the part, I think that was around there, where he talks about how he liked that he left it in an open drawer that his wife could get to, because she's obviously been through them, and it felt like she was complicit in what happened because she knew about it and didn't say anything.
He worked really hard to try and make her complicit. Yeah. It's true.
Okay, so do you want to read something?
Sure, I would love to.
Yeah.
Let's see.
What you going to read?
I'm going to read, so I usually read the opening section piece, and then a piece from later, the section that opens the first part, and then I usually read a piece from later in the book. But I think this time I might read from chapter 1. What do you think? Does that sound good?
Should I get my book out and read?
Sure. Yeah. So I'm
starting
on page 7.
7. Okay.
7. Yeah.
Let's see here. Okay. I'm ready.
Okay. Doreen Swilley walked into her kitchen and found her grown son, Jonathan, passed out at her table. From across the room, she smelled him. Stale beer, last night's whiskey. He'd left the door to the carport open. She slammed it hard enough to rattle the collectible plates on the wall. He swore, snorted upright. His red curls were slicked flat across his forehead with sweat. You owe me for the electric, said Doreen. Air conditioner hasn't cycled off in hours. She went to the coffee pot and measured grounds into a paper filter. Jonathan stretched his legs into the kitchen. That pot's got a timer on it, Mama. You can set it before bed, wake up to fresh hot. I know my own coffee pot. She'd asked for the damn thing last year for her birthday, and Jonathan and his family had given it to her. This year she'd asked for nothing, and nothing was what she got. A tuneless round of happy birthday and a check for $25. Jonathan hadn't even been there, just Lexi and the kids. She poured enough water into the reservoir for a full pot. She took the Tylenol from her windowsill, filled a glass with tap water, took these things to her son. You plan to tell me what has you at my house when you should be heading to work? Me and Lexi need some time apart. She's too haughty to exist beside. Jonathan shook 4 Tylenol into his palm, chewed them dry. Sucks up all the air, makes it so I can't barely breathe. Marital trouble was what Doreen would have guessed. She'd cared for her grandchildren every Sunday since Lexi started nursing school 3 years ago. And since winter, she'd been helping on Saturdays too, dropping in after breakfast and staying the day. She washed clothes and weeded flower beds, oversaw her grandchildren's homework. You and Lexi can't make it through the work week alone. You need someone to move into your house full time now? She sat across from Jonathan. Lexi came after me last night, hit me in front of the kids. Doreen checked the soft tissue near Jonathan's eyes, around his lips. She scanned his wrists. She'd seen marks on him in the past months, but only a few, and only from fingernails, those streaky scabs she recognized. She'd left them long ago on his father. On Lexi, she'd spied finger-shaped bruises along her upper arms, nothing worse. Jonathan's eyes were bloodshot from liquor, but he had no darkening, no swelling. If Lexi had struck him, it had been with an open palm. You hit her back? I got her to stop is all. Well, that could mean anything. Jonathan ran a fingernail along a scratch in the table, deepening it. I need to stay gone for a while. Me and Lexi need time to cool down. Doreen wanted to ask her son if he'd done his drinking before or after his fight with his wife. She wanted to ask him if it was at home that his wife slapped him or while they were out in Flyshoals, Vidi's Pizza, Mercer's Grocery. She wanted to know what her grandchildren had been witness to, and she wanted to know who else in town might have seen. But such questions would make him stop talking. This is your home, always will be, but that doesn't mean you should be here. Last time I left her, Lexi came back here to see me every day. We worked things out. Juliet was an infant then. Thomas wasn't even born. Lexi herself wasn't but 19. We're not so changed from them, me and Lexi. Is that so? Doreen stood to get their coffee. She wouldn't pretend to understand the vagaries of a long marriage. Her relationship with Jonathan's father had been a brief thing, 4 years and never legalized. Since then, she'd been involved only with her boss, Emmanuel Bird Markston. She knew from observing Bird's relationship with his wife that her affair with him was nothing like a marriage. As for Jonathan and Lexi, they shared a sibling-like familiarity mysterious to her. She poured 2 mugs and brought them to the table. Jonathan slurped coffee over his tongue, gagged. I'm going to have to eat something. I went to Merle's after I left Lexi, stayed till closing. So the drinking came after the fighting. It was the progression Doreen had hoped for. She checked the time. Close to 8, but Bird only came in 2 or 3 days a week now and rarely before 11. 15 years her senior, he'd been more or less retired for a decade. I have time to make us something, she said. A familiar tension grew between them. Jonathan was 9 the first time he got sent home for defending her honor on the playground. 12 the first time he told her the kids at school were right. She was a whore. Even now, after so much time had passed that everyone in Flyshoals, including Doreen and Bird, mostly overlooked their affair, Jonathan could still grow angry enough about it to pick a fresh fight. But this morning, he reached across the table and took her hand. Pancakes? His calluses were rough against her palm. The strangeness of her boy having grown into a man caught her. Once he'd been a creature entirely in her care. Get the bisquick. He stood to gather ingredients. When he was a child, she'd sometimes come into the kitchen on a weekend morning to find the eggs and the milk, the bisquick and the butter lined on the counter, his way of saying, "Please, Mama?" She caught him now inside view as he bent into the fridge. His ears had the same clamshell shape she'd traced with a fingernail when he was a newborn. She'd been so pleased that he'd gotten his father's ears. Her own stuck out. He'd gotten Billy's pale skin too, Billy's red hair. Her own hair was dark, her skin olive. Jonathan motioned toward the counter where the ingredients were lined. He looked so much like Billy in that moment, Doreen turned away. How had she not understood that she found her son beautiful only because he was hers? His father she remembered as an ugly man.
Yay! I was reminiscing when you were reading it. I was remembering me reading it. I think it was interesting that Doreen she looks them over and okay, they've got bruises. They're not so bad. It could be worse. And that is complicity, whatever. And right there, that comes from being in a relationship like that herself.
Absolutely, right? Yeah, she's making excuses. She's in denial.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Yeah, it opens with her in denial, but she doesn't remain in denial.
No, she doesn't, and I like that a lot.
Me too.
A lot, because as I was reading it, I was thinking, what if my children became an abusive spouse? How would I handle that? And I don't know what I would do.
Yeah, it's a terrifying thought. I don't know what I would do either.
Yeah, because you love your child. You love your child so much, but then they do stupid things, and you're like,
right.
Yeah, gosh, that would be such a tough place to be.
I think all of that comes out of larger structures that we're a part of, which is part of what I was trying to explore with the geology metaphor, and with all of the different characters and the ways that their fates are enmeshed, and how an event that happens in 1958 is still unfolding in 2009, and the way that the delusions that we carry about the world, the way that we think the world isn't the way that it is. So much of that are just these beliefs that we have because of our own experiences. Like you said, Doreen doesn't think that their marriage is abusive because she's been in an abusive relationship, and this one doesn't look as bad. And so breaking all of that down is what we have to do to save ourselves, right? And save each other, and which takes me back to the book I'm reading. Yeah.
Which I need to put in I started to do that. I also thought it was interesting how Doreen and what's the girl that Bird is with when he's a teenager?
Oh, Marla.
Yeah. How, oh gosh, that the bathroom scene, I'm not telling it, but oh my gosh, I had to stop for a while and be like, whoa. Because when you set it up, I'm like, no, she's not going to do that herself. She's not.
She's desperate, isn't she?
And yeah. But okay, so we'll start over with a one woman who keeps her baby and another woman who does not keep her baby. Right. And I don't know if it had to do with Marla was homeless versus Doreen, who wasn't, or had the self-confidence enough to figure it out.
Right. Well, Marla was married. I mean, yeah. Marla, she had a home and she had a husband, but she had grown up in a house filled with children, and she didn't want to raise anymore. Yeah. And then Doreen has a mother who performs herbal abortions and can easily help her abort this child if she doesn't want to have it, but she really does want to have this baby. Yeah.
Yeah, because I thought they were a good foil for each other, and two women in this one man's life, one of two of three. So
yeah, bird dog.
yeah.
He's causing lots of problems with the women in town.
Yeah. So I did it. I enjoyed the drama in their storyline. So a lot, actually. What are you working on now?
I'm working on another novel. And this one is set along the Altamaha down near Brunswick.
Okay.
And I don't want to say too much about it because I worry that it will jinx it. But it's about friendship, and it's also about being in a female body and what it means to go through the world in a female body.
Okay, that sounds good. I like the Brunswick. I like that your books are taking place in Georgia. I mean, what do they say? Write what you know.
Well, so initially, the novel I'm working on now, I thought that it would take place in the swamps of Louisiana, simply because I've always been fascinated by the swamps of Louisiana. And I took a trip and, I explored the swamps of Louisiana and I started writing. And then I realized that I couldn't do it because I would have a character walking along a riverbank and in spring, and I wouldn't know what birds she would see or what flowers would be in bloom. And you can look that stuff up, but it didn't come to life like it does if you know it in your body. So my husband's from Valdosta, and his father had a farm that was swampy. And so we spent a lot of time in the swampy farm and then paddling the Withlacoochee and that sort of thing. And then I recently made a friend down there who's a boat captain and will take you out on these fantastic tours of the Altamaha. So I found a place to set it that I knew.
That's awesome. That is awesome. All right, guys. Well, thank you for joining us. I really enjoyed this, and I highly recommend that you all go out and buy The Nature Remains, like right now. I put links in the, I always do that wrong, links in the comments where you can buy your copy, and we'll get you an autographed book. And we are discussing this next Thursday with our book club. So if anybody would like to join our virtual discussion, please do. Just send me a message somewhere, Facebook, email, website, and I will get you the link to the event. Looking really forward to it. The book clubs have keeping me sane. I belong to a lot. And so it's good to see faces every few weeks that you know really well. So
it's true.
Yeah. So if you're not in a book club, you should join a book club because book clubs are awesome.
Book clubs are really fun, right? It was more fun to talk about than books.
I do it all day. I do it professionally. And so in fact, my friends, I have friends all over the world, and they decided they were going to start a book club. And then one of them joked that, this is a little close to home for Kim, like just taking her work home with her when her friends started doing a book club. And so then I was like, can we read something I already read? Here's a list of every book I've read in the last 2 years. And
so what are you reading in that book club?
We just read The City We Became, and then next week that's N.K. Jemisin, and very good. Audiobook is really good.
Okay.
And then next month we're reading This Is How You Lose the Time War, which was it's beautiful.
Okay.
It's time travel, poetic time travel. And it's a love story, and it's a novella. So I read it twice in one day. And the authors of that, we're talking to them. We're interviewing them at the end of June. So,
okay. This is How You Lose a Time War.
This is How You Lose the Time War.
Okay.
And it is beautiful. And I mean, I read it twice. I read it the first time. And, here. I'm coming. Diane's coming to book club.
Excellent.
So, and that's a beautiful book. So. That's the fun thing is you talk to authors and you find out what inspires them. I love finding out the books that authors read because, you find out your favorite author reads this. Well, you want to go and read it.
It's true. And there are always so many books and you can't possibly know all of them. So it's just wonderful to be introduced to new ones by great booksellers, great independent booksellers like you.
Thank you. Yes. All right, guys. Thanks again for joining us. This was a lot of fun. Ginger, when things are normal, you have to come into our store and sell your book.
I would love to.
We would love to have you. We'll set it up the wedding style. Oh, here. Hi, Terry. Terry can't wait to see Diane. How about me, Terry? What about me? Terry works for us.
Hi, Terry.
Hi, Terry. All right. I keep trying to say goodbye, but then I get distracted. All right, guys. Have a good night.
Okay. Bye, everyone.
Bye, everybody. Let me switch this.